Welcome to the weekly message from Unity North Tampa, presented here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today's message is The 7 Spiritual Laws of Release, the Law of Letting Go, and was recorded on Sunday, October 23rd, 2022.
You know, it really feels like church in here today. You know what I mean when I say that? It's full. There's a wonderful energy. There's a peaceful energy. There's also an energy of healing. There's an energy of, okay, you know what? I am ready to move in consciousness. I am ready to release the old. Can I have an amen? Amen. Every now and then, I ask for one of those just to make sure you're with me. Because I'm ready to release aspects of my own self as well. What's so amazing about this spiritual journey is that you don't get to a place and arrive. You get to rest for a minute and then you get to do more and more and more, right? I don't know anybody who's perfect. Anybody met anybody perfect yet? Doesn't exist, I don't think. But what we are in the process of is awakening. We are in the process of becoming the soul we were designed to be. So we are in week 4 of my book, 7 Spiritual Laws of Release. And, I continue to be amazed at the levels that individuals around the country are using the principles in here. I've heard from CEOs, from school teachers, from retired folks, just all of us in between. We all have the same needs, I've discovered. I was just helping a dear friend who's he's worked in high levels of government and owned it's incredible business. And he's calling me about, well, what do we do with, this in this large company of over, billions of dollars a year, and everybody has the same need. They're stuck in an old way and the new way is trying to emerge. I believe this is happening in business. This is happening in corporations. I even see it happening on sports teams. Yeah, the old way of doing isn't working, and so a new way is trying to emerge. We're learning that collaboration, that communication, and also a release of the old helps the new come forward, right? Amen. All right. I like that. I didn't even have to ask for that one. That's good. That's good. So today is about the law of letting go. And I want to just put up this quote right away to say, what is the law of letting go? The law of letting go releases us from the past so we can be in touch with our soul and the reality of the present. I want to explain that a little bit, because if you're in the past, you can't possibly be in the present, right? It's really pretty simple, isn't it? And so the reason I had this as a whole law unto itself is that this is about your emotional life. Last week we talked in depth about the law of minimization. We talked about things in our physical home that we could move out. And I had a couple of people chuckling as they went out saying, I need a dumpster. No, 2 big dumpsters. And other people saying, boy, the thrift stores are going to love me. Did anybody do any of that last week? I'm just curious. Yep. How does your home feel now? Do you feel a difference? And you need more time. You mean a week wasn't enough to go through every single thing you own? Right. Exactly. Right. And so remember I said last week, use 15 minutes a week if it feels overwhelming. One of the things I've learned is that when we're really doing the deeper spiritual work, it just takes time. But what's wonderful about it is if you stay in process, is your whole life becomes spiritual instead of just on Sunday morning at 11. Right, that you're bringing the spiritual teachings into your life, into every aspect of life. It starts impacting the way you buy. It impacts the way you share. It impacts the way you serve. And so this is what we're seeking to do, is give you a new, in Unity, I've heard it said, we won't tell you what to think, but how. So in other words, we're learning new ways of thinking and being, right? And one of the things we're learning is to release the past. Release those things that may be binding us, like that song says. What I love about that song is the very last line, today is the day I walk away. In other words, there's a decision to be made, right? Because we can read about it. You can like this book. You can even love this book. But until you decide, nothing's going to change. I believe in 100% responsibility for one's life. If you have a commitment, you show up for that commitment. If you say you want to grow, well, then you do the work to grow. If you say you want to heal, then you start changing habits and heal. Right now, we all need help along the journey, but to not do it and then complain about it, no. I used to say to my students, homie, that don't play. The homework's either done or it isn't done. There's no in between like a maybe. Right? So in your life right now, I want you to really be thinking about as we go through today, because this is going to be a really individual process. What do I need to let go of to move into more fully living from soul on the emotional level? And let's look at number one. Number one. So growing up spiritually. Now, growing up spiritually means that we do learn we're a soul and that we seek to shed the psychological baggage from childhood. We all have it. I even believe we have it from past lives. If that's going to blow a gasket for any of you, just take a breath and move on. We'll just talk about this lifetime. No worries. But the idea is that who we were, who we used to be, how we viewed ourselves is really different from who we're growing into. So, and I want to give you an example. So, I knew this young man and he was super, super smart. He was a kind of kid that was just always kind of, moved to the beat of a different drummer. He read all the time. He would read encyclopedias and dictionaries and just anything he could get his hands on, super brainy smart. He'd go around barefoot all the time, even in the winter. Yeah, really, really different. And then as he grew and developed, he was really good in computers. And this is when computers were brand new, and when he was 15, I think when he was 14, he taught his high school computer class. He knew more than his teachers. And then when he was 15, he went to work for Wang Computers. Anybody remember Wang Computers? What a name. You got to love it. Wang Computers. And actually, he was so good at it, his mom had to drive him to work. At 15 years old, had to buy a suit and all that. But what's so interesting is his parents would say about him, that boy is so smart, he can't hang a picture. That's what his dad would say. That boy is so smart, he can't hang a picture. Well, I'm going to tell you something, the dad was wrong. Because as he grew and developed, yes, he was very brainy, but now in his, how old is he now? Let's see, I'm 53. So he just turned 60. He's in retirement and is an expert woodworker as well now. This is my brother. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've said, I'm still waiting on my wood communion goblets. You're going to make me that. So there was this residual self-image. I gave him a little credit in the acknowledgments in the beginning of the book. So even though he was a really brainy kid, my parents, even though really in a lot of ways, my parents did things really good. But they were only seeing him from a limited perspective. They couldn't see what he was capable of, right? And so that happens to all of us, doesn't it? And so sometimes we carry this idea that, I'm only this or I'm only that. And I call that our residual self-image. We're still carrying this idea around, even though it's not who we are anymore, right? And you've heard me say before, you are not your past. And that's what I mean. When we start to grow up spiritually, we realize we don't have to live from these old stories about us anymore, right? We don't have to live out those, and they're usually family stories. And by that, I don't mean our families were bad. As a matter of fact, I think your family was absolutely on target. You were born into the exact right one. I believe you chose to incarnate into that family, that very family that you grew up in. And the reason you chose to incarnate in that family is because you had lessons your soul wanted to learn. So see, that shifts everything. Rather than looking for somebody to blame, you're looking for reasons and ways to grow. So this is what I mean about growing up spiritually. If you're still in the blame game, this might be the wrong church for you. I say that with all the faith in the world. We'll attract more people who want to grow spiritually. Nobody to blame. Time to grow up spiritually. Be a spiritual grown-up. I say I want to grow, then I've got to do the stuff to grow. I say I want to be of service. We'll show up and serve. Nobody's stopping you. It's a free country. You say you want to experience abundance? Well, start practicing abundance principles. Time to grow up spiritually. Time to leave the past behind. And we're going to say, we see your goodness. We see your greatness, but you have to show up for you. That's the growing up spiritually. It's deciding today I'm walking away from this old idea. So there is a growth involved. There's growth on your part to shed the emotional, psychological baggage. And it may require therapy. It may require praying with a prayer chaplain. It may require calling Silent Unity every single day for 30 days. It may require stopping that addictive behavior you've had for years. Look at the person next to you and say, oh, she's serious about this. Yeah, I scared the leadership council when I said this may not be the church for you. They're like, oh, no. You know exactly what I mean. This is a church for spiritual grown-ups. This is a church for spiritual grown-ups where you're doing your work the other 6 days a week. So on Sunday, you get to celebrate not get a little spoonful, right? You've been doing the spiritual work all week. So number 2 is expanding past your past. Say with me, I am not my past. Say that with me. I am not my past. I'm not my past. Yeah, I'm not my past. I'm not my past. So all of us have had things happen to us. We've all had things we wish never happened. Yes, amen. We've all been in situations we wish we never would have been in. And friends, I've been writing stories as I'm saying all of this. In the last year, I had really been in a process of trying to move past old ideas about myself. And I was really guided to start writing down some family stories. And I've had other people outside the family start to read them. And it's been really, really interesting, the response. So as I put the stories down on paper, what it's helped me do is release it from myself and let the page hold it. Does that make sense? And so it's been super, super healing. And when I wrote this book, I hadn't done that yet. So it's not in the book. It's not in the book. But it's been a way for me to leave the past where it is. And somehow telling the story is helping me release it onto the page. It's also helping me see the joy and the order in what felt like utter chaos at the time. There was some chaos, most definitely. And it also showed me my ability to survive and even thrive. Except if I survive some of that, I'm the only one holding me back. You see what I mean? So it helps me move past my limited way of thinking. For instance, one of my old ideas about myself is that I should know. Has anybody ever had that one? I should know. Something about being the youngest of so many kids. There were 9 kids. Right, like I remember one time we were sitting around the dinner table and we had my music teacher over. Remember I told you there was always room for one more at our dinner table. And that we were talking about opera because, I come from a real musical family and everything. And I said, I pipe up, I'm in 5th grade and I go, I really love opera, but I can never understand it. And everybody laughed. And I was like, oh. Everybody's laughing at me because nobody said, oh, honey, So, right, you can't understand it because it's not in English. Just nobody thought to take a moment to explain it. So I went into a shame attack and thought I should know. Isn't that interesting? Now, another kid would have said, who are you laughing at? But for some reason, my soul journey, I took that on as I should have known. Yeah, right. Don't should yourself. Exactly. So one of the ways I'm healing that is being curious. It's a little thing like, oh, well, gee, I feel like I should know right now. So maybe I just need to ask a question and be curious. But I have to work at that one. So that's one of the ones I'm doing to expand past those old beliefs that I should know. Because how could a 5th grader know that? Right? Everybody else seemed to know. So I thought, well, maybe I should know. Yeah, so that's a real healing. I'll tell you another one. I was told I had a learning disability. I was pulled out of my classes to do special reading classes because I was having a hard time with comprehension. And I was told I had dyslexia and several other things. Here's what's interesting. In the last couple of years, I learned that there's a thing that can happen with your eyes that is actually physical, especially when you're born prematurely, which I was. And your eyes don't exactly match up. So I heard recently someone talking about going through their childhood issue of trying to correct their vision. And as he was talking, I thought, my goodness, this sounds awful familiar to how I've felt my whole life. I wonder if it's physical. So I'd asked eye doctors over the years, is there something wrong? And they all said, oh no, there's nothing physical. It's a learning disability. It's not. So they affirmed it. So then I finally called my eye doctor and said, do you have a specialist that deals with this particular thing? She said, oh yes, I know someone. So this is a long story. Here I am. I know you're with me on this. And I went in there and I had not been in the office 5 minutes. And the guy goes, oh, he said, I know what's wrong with your eyes. Not you have a learning disability. And then, he did all those tests they do with those paddles and look at this and look at that. He said, you have a condition. He said, were you born prematurely? That was one of the first things he said. I said, yes, I was. He said, well, this is really common in premature babies, that your eyes just never completely lined up. I said, what? I said, I thought I had a learning disability. He said, oh, no, I've talked to you for 5 minutes. You don't have a learning disability. I can tell already you don't have a learning disability. It's your eyes. I said, it's my eyes the reason I see one line and two lines? He said, yeah. One eye will work for a while, and then it shuts down, and the other eye takes over. And because of that kind of jumps down a line. He said it's called intermittent suppression vision. I mean, it had a whole big name and everything. And then, of course, thousands of dollars later and lots of tests, I affirmed that was exactly what was wrong with me. And it changed everything because I had a new thought about myself. Here's how it plays out. Now, I'm giving you this one example and going into detail so you can apply it to your life. Right after that, I was at the post office. And you know how in the post office now, a lot of times you'll write out an address and then they make you fill out a label anyway, which I don't understand. But anyway, whatever. I was at the post office. I'd written all that out. And the lady behind the plexiglass said, is it 5'6" or 6'5"? I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. She said, well, over here it says 5'6", and over here it says 6'5". And my old reaction would have been, I would have gone into some complex emotional shame attack. I said, well, you know what? I have an issue with my eyes. I'm in the process of healing, so I'm going to need your help with that. Can you please look up the address and let me know which it is? I think it's this one, but sometimes I mix up the numbers. She said, oh, yes, I'm happy to help with that. What changed was me and my reaction. It's a little thing, but it changed everything. That one limiting belief that was told to me over and over and over by the school and by the doctor, and it was affirmed because I couldn't take anything in I was reading. As a matter of fact, for years, I wouldn't even teach a class on a book because I was afraid I'd get it wrong. I would read a book 4 and 5 times before I'd ever even teach it in a ministry. That was what it took for me to teach one book. It was easier if I just wrote my own, see, so. Yeah. Isn't that amazing that was a big limit? Now I'm writing books. Is that amazing? To me, that's a personal, wow. Yeah. That's what I mean about expanding past your past. And that was just dealing with one limiting belief. All right, let's look at number 3. So what I'm really talking about is living beyond your story. Living beyond your story. What do I mean by that? So what I've learned in my own journey and working with so many people is that when we start to learn that things have happened to us and that, somebody ought to be responsible, that pretty soon we start telling that story to people about what happened, that happened. It's like when something bad happens and we call the friend or the loved one, and we just have to talk all about it. We make a big story about it. You know what I'm talking about? So whenever we start attaching to that story and we start to get attention from it, pretty soon we're living as if that story is who we are. And so what I've learned in my journey is the more I can drop my story of what happened to me, instead focus on what I'm moving into, then that gives me a little more freedom, actually a lot more freedom in my life. So instead of living about what happened in the past, I'm seeking to live beyond my story. Because what I've learned is nobody knows your story unless you tell them. Right? No one knows your story unless you tell them. And if that story, you're hanging on to it in a way as this is what happened to me and I'm a victim, guess what? You're going to keep being a victim. And you're going to be stuck in that story instead of creating a new story. And for me, I want to create a new story. I want to create a new story. I want to create new life, new love, new energy in my life. I want to grow into my own soul. Right? So I want to live beyond my story. So say to the person next to you, let's live beyond our story. Yeah, let's live beyond our story. So it gets hard sometimes to love yourself when you start really seeing what's under there, when you start really seeing your limits. Yeah, I can't remember if I've told you this or not, but I remember. So because of my growing up, there was really not a lot of protection. I mean, we were just running wild. That many kids see at dinner, you know what I mean? Like, get out of the house, for God's sake. So, we were most of us wild, running everywhere. Anyway, so with my son, sometimes, I've been pretty protective. And I remember one day I was realizing that I was being a little overprotective in a situation. And we were in my son's room, and he was there playing with the little Legos and everything. And we were building a little fort with the Legos. And I said, Josh, I really realized something recently. He said, what's that, Mama? Sitting there building. I said, well, I think I've been a little overprotective because I was never protected. And I'm just realizing you don't need that. So he plays a second more, and then he looks up and he goes, do you think you might want to work on healing that? I said, I think that's a good idea. And I said, and you know what? A part of that healing is me admitting that to you and apologizing. Because you have your own life, you have your own mind, and you know how to take care of yourself. And I'm here if you need anything, but I'm going to give you more space. Yeah. It was interesting because the building changed after that point. Weren't so many walls in that building. Interesting, right? It's called play therapy. Kids are going to show you what's going on by how they play. Yeah. Interesting, right? So part of me saying that to him is having enough self-love to acknowledge my mistakes and to love myself in those mistakes. It's really, really a process. And the affirmation I often use is so simple. I love and accept myself just as I am. Say that with me. I love and accept myself just as I am. I love and accept myself just as I am. Now, as I say that doesn't preclude the need to do self-work. You understand that? I've seen a lot of well-meaning unity people say, I love and accept myself just as I am, and then they blow people out with their anger and their resentments. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, this is a process of self-awareness, and you're saying, I love and accept myself just as I am, warts and all, with all my mistakes. And as I learn to love myself even in this, guess what? I have more room for other people too. I have more room for other people's mistakes. Doesn't mean we don't have boundaries and limits. We do, but we have to be able to love ourselves. I love and accept myself just as I am. Will you say that with me one more time? I love and accept myself just as I am. If you haven't done this, when you get up in the morning and you look in that mirror, try saying that in the mirror to yourself. I love and accept myself just as I am. It's hard. Hallelujah, yes. Because that can be hard when you're looking in the mirror. Right? Because all of society tells us what's wrong. Yeah. High five yourself. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Bam, working it. Right. I love and accept myself just as I am. One more time with this idea. I love and accept myself just as I am. As we do that, friends, there's more grace for everyone else. More grace, more love, more abundance, more joy. And again, we're doing all of this work in the emotional realm so we can move into our soul's freedom, into the goodness that God has for us.
Thank you for listening to the weekly message from Unity North Tampa here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com. This message is copyright 2022, Unity North Tampa, all rights reserved. Our theme music, The Light of God, is composed by Shannon Croft and used with permission and available at shannoncroft.com. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.